Today, inside the Naval Academy, things are quiet and peaceful, just as they've been for many weeks. The coronavirus continues to keep us at home. But not everyone's at home. Not everyone is inside on the computer participating in a Zoom or a Google Meet. In Minneapolis, in Atlanta, in New Orleans, in Los Angeles, in Louisville, in New York City, in Washington, D.C., and in downtown Annapolis 2 days ago. All over the country, there is outrage, justifiable outrage. It's outrage over violence and systemic racism against African Americans in particular, but more generally against anyone who does not incur the benefits of white privilege. Not to put too fine a point on it, it's outrage over centuries of mistreatment at the hands of those of us who have had and continue to have positions of power and privilege. On Memorial Day weekend in Central Park, Amy Cooper dialed 911, and she said to Christian Cooper, who was simply birdwatching while she was the one breaking the law with her unleashed dog, she said, "I'm going to tell them there's an African American man threatening my life." Why did she feel that was important to specify that an African American man was threatening her life instead of simply a man? Setting aside the fact that what she said was a lie anyway, she could have said, "There's a man threatening my life." But she said, "an African American man." She said that because that's what white privilege looks like. And that's what racism in particular looks like. It's the idea that being white and her being white and his being black, that difference will automatically confer upon her the power to have things go her way. And why will things go her way? Because the police will believe her. He's black. She's white. He's a threat. She's innocent. In that fraction of a second, she weaponized her whiteness against his blackness. And it works every day. It almost worked that day. While many are focused right now on the violence, the looting, the fires, and the vandalism that's occurring, I think we must acknowledge that the anger that is exploding across the country is an expression of deep and real concerns about institutional racism. And while no one should condone the violence, it's the institutional racism and the system of injustice that ignited the rage in the first place, and that we must not ignore. Do not be confused about what the issue really is. The issue is racism. And just saying I'm not a racist doesn't cut it. Amy Cooper said exactly that. She said, "I'm not a racist. I did not mean to harm that man in any way." Yes, she is. And yes, she did. In his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, Ibram Kendi writes, "What's the problem with being not racist? It is a claim that signifies neutrality. I am not a racist, but neither am I aggressively against racism. But there is no neutrality in the racism struggle." This has been going on for centuries, but last week it took only 525 seconds. 525 seconds to end a life. George Floyd's life. Elizabeth Ferris is a student at Georgetown University. She was in DC at the intersection of 14th and H Streets on Sunday, filming the protests with her cell phone. A flashbang occurred as she was recording, and that's all she was doing, just recording with her phone. A half dozen sting balls struck her leg. And do you know what she said about that later? She said, "I took 6 rubber bullets, but do you know what didn't happen to me? No one kneeled on my neck." Pete and I went running yesterday morning, as we do nearly every day. We do not, and we did not, fear being killed while doing so. No one followed us in a pickup truck, blocked our path, and threatened us at the point of a shotgun. That's not true for others. That was certainly not true for Ahmaud Arbery. Why am I spending our time on this here today? Because to be silent now when people want to know who stands where, to be silent is to be complicit. I will not be complicit. You should not be complicit. We together cannot be complicit. This is not a political issue. This is an issue about respect and basic human dignity. We cannot carry on with our normal routine as though nothing has happened and is happening. We cannot worry that to say anything is to become political and partisan. Our midshipmen, our faculty and staff colleagues, our friends, and our families, they all want to know where we stand. Caliph O. Wright, the Command Master Sergeant of the Air Force, wrote this on Twitter earlier this week. What should you be doing? Like me, acknowledge your right to be upset about what's happening to our nation. But you must then find a way to move beyond the rage and do what you think is right for the country, for your community, for your sons, daughters, friends, and colleagues, for every Black man in this country who could end up like George Floyd. We know where he stands. Likewise, Admiral Mike Mullen wrote an opinion piece in The Atlantic just a few days ago. He said, "Our fellow citizens are not the enemy and never must become so." We know where he stands. And former President George Bush issued this as part of his statement this week. America's greatest challenge has long been to unite people of very different backgrounds into a single nation of justice and opportunity. The doctrine and habits of racial superiority, which once nearly split our country, still threaten our union. We can only see the reality of America's need by seeing it through the eyes of the threatened, oppressed, and disenfranchised. We know where he stands, too. So, where do we stand? Where do you stand? Where do I stand? It's our responsibility, all of us, especially as institutional leaders, to model the principles of civility, of dignity, of respect, and of understanding for all people, for those within our Naval Academy family, and also for those outside in the wider community in which we live. It is our responsibility to embody inclusivity, to embrace diversity, and to educate others about their power and their importance. We've talked about these things for several years now. Clearly, we must do more. Clearly, we must do more. What does doing more look like? For starters, it looks like this. Right now, most of the midshipmen are at home, wherever home is. For some, they need only look out their windows to be a witness to the tension, to the violence, to the fear. It's all around them in their community. For others, they wonder if it's safe to go outside, to go anywhere, to do anything. Will I be stopped, forcibly dragged from my car, tasered, thrown to the ground, my arm broken, my hands zip-tied? And for what? Being Black? Our midshipmen want to know something very basic. They want to know if anyone else is noticing. It's a version of, did you see that? Do you see what I see? For many midshipmen, the question is even more fundamental. Do you regard me and people who look like me as fully human? Can you see me, or am I invisible to you? Do you see my fear? Do you see my pain? People want to know that you recognize and see them as equals. They want you to recognize the pain they feel. Better yet, to identify with their pain. Midshipmen want to know this. They need to hear from us. Weeks ago, on one of these 11:30 all skates, I encouraged you to take some extra time and ask your colleagues, how are you doing? And when they respond with the inevitable, I'm doing fine, ask it again. Ask a second time to get beyond the usual snap reaction, and then find out how they're really doing. And listen to them. Hear them. Now is the time to do that. Again, with our faculty and staff colleagues for sure, but perhaps most importantly this time with the midshipmen in our classes. This is the time to practice intrusive leadership, to make certain that they all know where you stand, where we stand. They need to know that we care and that we will go the extra mile to make sure that every member of the family is valued, that every member is treated with dignity and respect, to make sure that they know we really do see them and we're open and eager to understand their struggle and pain, and that we're ready and willing to lend support in whatever way they need. The coronavirus is a challenge for sure, but it is not our biggest challenge. Racism is far bigger and far harder to defeat. Now you know where I stand. For your part, I encourage you to find your voice. This is when being a role model and a mentor matters most. The midshipmen need to see honor, courage, and commitment in action. Please show them. Ask them how they are doing. Be there for them. Let them talk. Listen to them and support them as they seek to be reassured by you that you and we care. Let them know that you see them, that we see them, that we see all of them. Late yesterday, the CNO, Admiral Mike Gilday, issued a statement much like what I've said here. You should read his words and listen to the video online, and then you will know where he stands too. I'll ask Captain Anderson to post the URL in the chat for you now. And if you want to better educate, to better prepare yourself for discussions on race and racism, a simple place to start looking is with the materials provided online by the Smithsonian through the National Museum of African American History and Culture in their Talking About Race series. If you Google that, Talking About Race, Smithsonian, it comes right up. I'm not a user of Twitter or of Instagram, but imitating the style of the Commandant, who is a master of using those online formats, I'll finish my remarks simply like this. You know where I stand. AcDean out.